Chapter 3 My Grandfather 2 weeks after meeting Robert Benson, I was driving only 3 or 4 blocks from my home when I began to get that witness of the spirit feeling again. This was a very strong sensation, and it went from the top of my head to the tips of my toes. I started feeling sweaty, and I thought that my whole body was going to overheat. I began to have the sense that my grandfather was there with me. He had passed away 8 years earlier, and although we were close, I had not thought much about him, even though I had enjoyed being in his company. I saw nothing unnatural, but could feel a familiar energy that my grandfather was emanating. As with Robert Benson, I tried to clear my mind of all thoughts and listen for a voice, but nothing came. Just this extremely intense feeling of great joy. As the feeling began to fade, I looked next to me in the passenger seat and actually pointed my finger in that direction and said out loud, "I know that you are here, Grandpa, and when I get to the other side, I want you to tell me how you made me feel this way." Still, I heard no speaking. At this point, I so wanted to hear him or see him, but there was no contact in what we would call a normal or physical way. Because of the close connection with my grandfather, when he was still in the flesh, this encounter surprisingly meant a lot more to me than the meeting with Robert Benson. Although Robert and his 2 friends were visible to my physical eye, they still did not have the impact that my grandfather did. Looking back on it now, I think the added emotion tied in with this encounter gave it a much longer lasting and deeper meaning for me. It took a couple of days for the effects to wear off, and even after a few weeks, all I had to do was think about the experience and immediately the feeling would return, and I could, to some degree, enjoy him again. As the weeks began to roll on with publishing Life in the World Unseen, my grandfather started coming more frequently. If I became still, focused, meditative, or went into the now, which I will explain later, I could actually hear his voice and he would speak to me. The encounters always seemed to have a purpose, and I pondered often at how concerned he seemed to be about his family and what was happening to his posterity. Several times he came with information about my living grandmother and things that I could do to help her. In late July of 1993, my grandfather made a most unusual visit while I was driving to work on the freeway one early morning. My grandfather suddenly, without warning, appears in the car with me. Now, he is not sitting invisibly next to me, but I can actually see him standing in the middle of the dashboard, half in and half out of the car. Exactly how this works, I haven't a clue. He is dressed as I remember seeing him when he was still in the flesh. The road and the rest of the area behind him in front of the car have gone gray, and it seems as though the vehicle is on autopilot. The first words out of his mouth are, "Whatever you do, don't stop growing and developing spiritually. It will put you so much further ahead in the world to come." At this time, he also tells me several personal things about my life and tasks I should do, which will help me to progress. Then he explains that a cousin of mine is in need of help and he wants me to call and try to be of assistance. As he leaves, my surroundings go back to normal, but I can still feel the energy he brought with him. It is peaceful and serene, calming yet direct. It is hard to convey now the true depth of what I was feeling at the time. To experience the continuation of a relationship that had ended with death was new to me. It is really difficult to convey the magnitude of what it felt like. When people died, I had learned to drop them from my contact list. That was the end of my kind of relationship. Yet here he was, literally continuing our friendship. There really is no death, just a transformation to another state of living. The mind or personality is exactly the same mind it was upon the change to spirit life. I had always had a belief in the afterlife, but to switch to a knowing or sure knowledge that it is there is a bit of a jump. I knew I had to act on my grandfather's wishes. As I made the first call, I could feel the hesitation in my voice when my cousin's wife answered the phone. I had only seen my cousin once in 5 years, and it was a little awkward trying to help him when I didn't even know what he needed. His wife was very nice on the phone, but told me everything was fine and that they didn't need my help. With this, I let it go and went about my normal routine. It had never occurred to me to have my grandfather be specific about what was wrong. A couple of weeks later, the same thing happened. Again, my grandfather came to me and repeated the same words about helping my cousin. This visit was not visual, but verbal only. I could hear him very clearly and feel his presence, but saw nothing with my physical eyes. Strangely, I began to find it hard to tell if I was hearing his voice with my physical ears or in my mind, sort of like seeing Robert Benson and wondering if I saw him with my physical eyes or my spiritual sight. The two worlds feel closely connected and overlap in so many ways, it actually seems very natural. After this visit, I again made the call to my cousin with the same results. A bit more embarrassed than the first time, I dismissed the incident but began to wonder just a bit if I was losing my mind. Why would I be asked to help someone who didn't need help? Another 2 weeks went by, and again my grandfather came and gave me the same message for the third time. With extreme trepidation, I sunk my head and thought, not again. How can he do this to me? Am I just a guinea pig and they are having their fun with me? How many times can I do this? But this time there was a different result. When I asked my cousin's wife if there was anything I could do to help them, she started to cry. After some time, she composed herself and began to tell me a most bizarre tale about her adopted children. Before she and my cousin married, she was married to another man and they had adopted 4 children. These children came from 3 different cultural backgrounds: Indian, Korean, and African American. It was a family blend that was sure to present challenges to the best of parents. Then accusations of child molesting led to a divorce and left the family very dysfunctional. When my cousin came on the scene, it at first seemed that the family was going to find stability again, but that was short-lived. Within a brief period of time, the teenage girls were accusing my cousin of similar problems. His wife informed me that family services had just picked up the children and put them in foster homes. Both my cousin and his wife were devastated. I then asked her, how could I help? She said that they needed an attorney and the money to fight family services and prove that they were fit parents. At this point, I had no money and I knew of no attorney that handled such cases. I didn't have the courage to tell my cousin's wife that our dead grandfather had told me to call, so I just said, I don't know exactly what to do, but I think I know someone who can help. I'll get in touch with him and see what he has to say. By this time, I had learned that if I prayed and asked the Lord to send my grandfather, he would immediately respond. This would not work, however, if I only put a casual effort into my request. The endeavor had to be genuine and with a concentrated intent. In time, this process would become easier. When I requested of the Lord to send my grandfather on this occasion, he was immediately there. I later learned that I could leave the Lord out of the request and still get results, but I had to be a bit more careful about what I received. My grandfather's instructions were to call my attorney and get a referral for another attorney from him. This I did, and my attorney not only gave me a referral for another attorney, but he gave me a list of 4 lawyers to choose from. As soon as I concentrated on the list, I heard my grandfather's voice and felt that warm feeling again. He showed me which attorney to call by saying him and having the name light up on the page, so I never even bothered contacting the others. To my surprise, the attorney that I called was a bishop in the Mormon church. I felt that if anyone would understand my cousin's need for help, it would be this man. He wanted to meet with my cousin and his wife and then contact me. This he did a few days later and told me that he would like to take the case. He felt he would be able to help my cousin get his children back. I then asked him how much he charged, and he said $100 per hour. I am sure he heard me gasp on the other end of the phone. I then asked, "Do you ever do these things on a lump sum basis?" I gulped. I think that my terminology caught him off guard a bit, but he understood what I meant and said it would take $5,000 to see this case through. This seemed like a mountain of money as I was trying to get my little book publishing business off the ground. I could think of 10 places that I could spend that kind of money rather than putting it into something that seemed like someone else's problem. I said, "I don't have the money, but I know someone who may be able to help me get it. I'll have to get back to you. Please don't say anything to my cousin about how much this is going to cost. I know that it will only put him under more stress." He agreed and thanked me for helping him get involved with the case. I think he felt a genuine connection with the family and really did want to help. It was only a split second before my grandfather was talking to me. He said, "Don't worry about the money. We will help you get it." I must admit this didn't help me to forget about the money. I could see no way that my business was going to get those kinds of funds. It would have been easier to crawl across the freeway naked in rush hour traffic than to find $5,000. About a week later, in early September, my grandfather came again. He told me to get $1,000 together and go to Las Vegas. Once I was there, he would show me what to do. For the first time since his appearing to me, I started to question what he was telling me, and I wrestled with his instructions. I found that the communication line was not as clear. This, I didn't know at the time, was because of my lack of faith. I asked him what he wanted me to do in Las Vegas, but he would give me no answer. In my mind, I kept trying not to think about it, but I still couldn't help but wonder if he was going to have me gamble. Although he was not speaking, I knew he was listening, so I told him I had never gambled in my life and that what he was asking me to do was totally out of character for me. He still did not answer back, so I resolved to get the $1,000 together and play it by ear, go by the Spirit. When I got to Las Vegas, I began to hear my grandfather's voice again, and he directed me to Caesar's Palace. There he had me sit at the roulette wheel, and we began playing. This was by no means something I was forced to do, nor was my free will taken away at any time. Everything I was doing, I did of my own free will and choice. Now, I simply tried to concentrate on my grandfather and have him give me any instructions that he felt I needed. Never, ever in my life had I been in such an awkward position. This place seemed to have no redeeming qualities, and I kept questioning myself why I was there. One thing I was sure of, I was not here for my own personal gain. I would rather have starved. Still, I persisted, taking one step at a time, and then things started to happen. After about an hour, I had tripled what I came in with and began to see light at the end of the tunnel. Even to this day, I can feel the pride that came over me as I was winning the money that my cousin needed to get his children back. It was a feeling of exuberance that I was beating the system. Then, as fast as I had won it, I lost it all. Not just the winnings, but the seed money as well. Dejected at 1 o'clock in the morning, I went out to my Jeep and lay down in the back. As I thought on the events that had just taken place, I began to plead with heaven that I could have an answer to why this had turned out so negatively. Not only was I short the $5,000 that my cousin needed, but I was out the $1,000 I had brought with me. Money was tight at the time, and this was beginning to feel like a mean trick. It was much easier to blame my grandfather than to ever blame myself. I knew that getting angry would not solve the problem, but some outlet for the frustration I was feeling would really be nice. Then I heard my grandfather's voice. He said, "We just had to see if you would do it." In kind of an angry tone, I shot back, "But you knew that I would do whatever you asked." And he said, Yes, but you didn't know that you would do it. You put too much emphasis on money. Then I said, That's easy for you to say. You don't have to eat or buy clothes or put a roof over your head. He replied, Go home and we will provide the money to help your cousin. It was a long, rather embarrassing 6-hour journey back home. Not often have I felt sorry for myself or indulged in self-pity, but I did this time. Looking back, I can see that I had far too much interest in the outcome. I was not going to be happy unless it turned out the way I thought it was supposed to. I would soon learn differently. The other side had a different agenda for me on this trip. I have included this in my history here because it has impacted myself and many others, and at some point will have a greater significance to me than it does at this writing. My thoughts are that by sharing it now, its future role may have a smoother transition. On the way home, I was led to take a side jaunt to a gold mining venture known as the Relief Mine or the Dream Mine. This mine is just south of Spanish Fork, Utah, and has never produced any monetary benefit to its supporters since its opening back in the late 1800s. Starting with the dream experience by John Coyle, this mine has created more spiritual controversy than any single project in Utah history. The fact that John Coyle made prediction after prediction that came true left even his staunchest critics wondering where this man fit into the grand scheme of things. Although a strong supporter of the Mormon Church, he found himself at odds with the leadership on many occasions. It is hard to describe in words the feelings I had this hot September day as I stepped foot on the property for the first time. Some call it hallowed ground or a spiritual vortex, but for me, a newcomer to this place, it was an exhilarating feeling I had never experienced before. I felt light or buoyant as I walked. Why it had this effect on me I cannot say. I have been back to the land many times since and never felt the energy like I did that day. Some time shortly after getting home, I had a dream about this mine in which I was taken into a cavern that was opened up by the people working the mine. When we entered this cavern or large room, there were 7 or 9 of us who had been selected to view and document what was in this man-made cave. We proceeded past other caverns to this last one and entered from what seemed to be the west side, if one is able to tell directions underground. The room had some large columns which looked like they may have been left for support. Near one of these columns I saw a vase about 3 feet high and 10 inches across the top. It was filled with gold coins that had inscriptions on them I had never seen. Records of every type and description were all around. Most of them seemed to be made of metal, but I did not examine them close enough to be sure. At one end of the room there was a table that attracted my attention, but I could not tell why I was drawn to it. On top of the table were writing instruments that I had never seen before. I started to ask questions about what I was seeing, and the dream began to fade. I know that I was told many things about this place, but I have never been able to recall the specifics. I suppose that in time I will understand with greater detail what this is all about. Until then, I am satisfied to let it unfold in its time. How Coyle's visions and mine will finally play out, I cannot say, but I do know that he fulfilled a great mission on this earth of which we have only seen the beginning. Within 2 weeks of getting home from Las Vegas, my business began to go crazy. I was doing radio interviews by phone about the book Life in the World Unseen all over the country, and the books were selling better than they ever had. Prior to this time, I would sell between 5 and 15 books in the days following an interview. Now the numbers increased dramatically. One interview at a station in Philadelphia sold over 300 copies within a few hours. To my great surprise, I soon had earned enough money to pay for my cousin's legal battle. Although I had stretched the payments out over a couple of months with the attorney, I still had enough money to pay him and meet all of my other obligations. At this point, I found that my grandfather was right. If I would just trust in what I was given, it would all turn out for my good, even if I didn't see it at the time. The legal battle for the children went on for over a year, and in the end, the parents decided it was in the best interest of the children and their long-term good to be with families that better fit their needs. For me, it was another lesson in trying to not predict the outcome, just do as I know to do.